to another episode of the Critics Corner, even though I'm not in a corner. Where every Tuesday I pretend to have enough qualifications to speak professionally about literature. Today's Critics Crash Course is focused on Alice Munro's anthology, The Moons of Jupiter. The Moons of Jupiter was published in 1982, an oldie but a goodie, and is comprised of 11 short stories. Today we'll be focusing on 3 of my personal favorites, and they are the only ones I read. I'm kidding. Called The Chadleys and Flemings, Dulce, and the titled Moons of Jupiter. Throughout these 3 short stories, there are a series of motifs present to aid in the development of revealing the major theme. Pause. What is that, you ask? What is a motif? Well, let me explain. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a motif is a recurring, salient, thematic element, or in easier terms, it is a recurring idea. In Alice Munro's anthology, The Moons of Jupiter, the 4 main motifs used in these 3 short stories are 1. Memories, 2. Female protagonists, 3. Failed relationships, and 4. Connections. These 4 motifs are all used to prevail the main theme of self-perception. Let's focus on the first short story, The Chadleys and the Flemings. As the narrator awaits a visit from her Aunt Iris, whom she hasn't seen in over 20 years, she ponders on old memories and the ancestral history of both sides of her family, the Chadleys and the Flemings. The narrator, or for the sake of this video, let's just name her Gertrude, currently lives in Vancouver, Canada with her pretentious husband Richard. During her wait for Aunt Iris, she reflects on how her aunts have become almost completely forgotten and obsolete in her own life. What a terrible niece. Just saying, getting that out there. Gertrude then questions the value of her own life and fears that she will be forgotten as her aunts once did. Illustrating the significance of relationships, connections, and memories to one's identity, the narrator states, connection, that's what it was all about. The cousins were a show in themselves, but they also provided a connection. A connection with the real, impractical, and dangerous world. Now let's move on to the next short story, Dulce. Lydia, a 45-year-old woman, is our protagonist. Divorced for 9 years and recently broken up with her lover, Lydia questions who she is. Not used to being alone, she takes a trip to the Grand Manan in the Bay of Fundy, where she meets mostly men, however, the innkeeper is a woman. During this trip, she questions who she is and who she can be without men in her life. During Lydia's search of who she strives to be, she reflects on how her past relationships with her ex-husband and ex-lover Duncan have influenced her identity and her self-perception. As Lydia experiences a loss of self-worth and questions who she has become, this is evident through the narration when it states, but nevertheless, she had stopped being one sort of woman and had become another, and she had noticed it on this trip. Evident through Lydia's past relationships, it is obvious that men's opinions pose the greatest power on her own self-perception. She cares so heavily about what men think, and therefore, she will do anything in order to please them, even if it means changing who she truly is. Lydia realizes she needs to separate her self-perception from the opinions others have on her. Of all the men she met at the Grand Manan, she acknowledges that she easily could have slept with any of them. However, she chose not to, as it is not the path she wants to take. Last but not least, let's move on to short story number 3, Moons of Jupiter. Moons of Jupiter is focused on a woman named Janet. She's a writer resided in England and currently comes back home to Toronto to take care of her ill father. As she's taking care of her father begins to offer some of his opinions on Janet's life. Similar to Lydia, men's opinions in their life pose the greatest influence on their own self-perception. For Lydia, it was her ex-husband and her ex-lover, but for Janet, it is her father. These opinions pose a heavy influence on their self-perception, making them want to change who they really are. As Janet's father provides his own opinion on her life, she states that the message I got from him was simple. Fame must be striven for, then apologized for. Getting or not getting it, you will be to blame. Now time to compare and contrast the 3 short stories. To begin with the easy stuff, they all have a female protagonist, Lydia, Janet, and Gertrude. These 3 female protagonists all endure similar experiences that cause a change in their own self-perception, specifically with their failed relationships. With 3 female protagonists, it's very beneficial to analyze this text using the lens of a critical paradigm, specifically the feminist critique. Feminist criticism has been around from the 1960s to the present and used to analyze a wide variety of literature. This critique analyzes the illustration of women on a political, social, and economic standard. This criticism focuses on mainly how gender inequality is performed as well as biasness. Often found in literature, women live in a patriarchal society in which men pose dominance. Likewise, in the anthology The Moons of Jupiter, Janet, Lydia, and Gertrude are three female protagonists experience the dominance males inconspicuously pose over them through their influence on their self-perception. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Critics' Corner, and I will see you next week. Peace.